Okay, so I've titled the course Elementary Latin, the Basics of an Ancient Language, because learning Latin is a lot different than learning, say, modern languages that we talk today, right? So it's different than learning, say, English or Spanish or Mandarin or Japanese or something like this. It's different. Why? Because it is an ancient language. It's not the same as stuff that's spoken today. Um, Latin is still spoken by people today, but it's not natively spoken anymore, right? Which means it's not spoken by people who were born to parents who spoke Latin, right? So it's a little bit different in that way. So, that being said, these older ancient languages, people thought a little differently then. And they, of course, because they thought differently, they spoke very differently too. So it's a little different in that way, right? And so we don't get the same kind of experience learning Latin than other languages. But it nonetheless is still really, really, really fun. And today is going to be the intro to show you why. We're going to do a little bit of Latin, but it's going to be pretty small compared to what we'll do eventually. All right. So, what is Latin? Who was it spoken by? So, Latin is the language of the ancient Roman people, right? Right, they didn't speak a language called Roman or Italian like today, right? Today it's Italy, right, is where Rome is. So it wasn't spoken, it wasn't called that, sorry, rather, it was the language of Latin. And so, as we can see, it was spoken by the Roman people and everybody who the Romans took over, right? Because the Romans owned a lot of land, lots and lots and lots, much more than other empires of this time. So what ends up happening is all the people who get taken over by the Romans, they either one, they want to learn Latin, or two, they have to learn Latin because of one reason or another. Maybe it's because they needed to work for the Romans. Maybe it was because they wanted to be more like the Romans, some people, right? So it was spoken in Italy, but also a lot of the places around Italy, all the way up to England. People were speaking Latin eventually, and then almost into India, almost there. Not quite into India, but almost there. That's how far it had spread, right? It was spoken most regularly by, like I say, native people who were born with parents who spoke Latin, and then they learned when they were babies how to speak Latin in the years of 700 BC to 750 CE, or the modern days, right? Sometimes people call these BC and AD, or BCE and CE, right? So it was spoken about 1,000 years most, like when it was most popular, right? And this little picture, just to describe it, because the thing is about learning Latin is that we need to learn some history too. We can't get away from it, right? After all, we're talking about people who lived, in some cases, 2,000 years ago, sometimes not that long ago, but we're talking about people from that time, right? So we need to know what they were living like, what they were doing, what they interacted with, how they interacted with things, or we can't understand really what is going on in the language, right? So that's one of the big differences with Latin and, say, learning something like a modern language like Spanish or French, is that we have to learn a little bit of history. And don't worry, it's all going to be pretty interesting stuff, and you'll actually find that it relates to a lot of stuff that goes on today, right? So in this picture, we see the Roman Forum. This is the big section of the Roman city that had all the governmental buildings, right? And you can see it's a very, very busy kind of place. One second, just need to shut the window. There we go. So you can see it was a very, very busy, busy, busy place. This was all the governmental buildings, all of the important temples, right? You can see, maybe some of you know what an old Roman or Greek temple looks like. You can see that look to them, right? So yes, this is the Roman Forum, right, where all the important things happened, right? Now I have this picture of Italy to just really reinforce to you guys that this is where this language came from, right? It came from what we call Italy today. It wasn't called Italy back then, of course. But you'll notice that the map has all different names than any of the names that we use for the most part in modern times for Italy's cities, right? Rome is almost the only city that has its original name still from long, long ago. But you'll see all kinds of different names like Bolii or Senorii, right? Peniki, right? All of these Westini, right? All kinds of different names that are unfamiliar. And it's just to show you that this is the old world. These are all the old Latin names for the cities, right? Okay, so let's continue on. So do people still speak Latin today? Yes, absolutely, people still speak Latin today. It tends to be a smaller community now. It's big enough, right? Lots of different places in the world still have to learn Latin in high school, like in Italy. And some schools in the United States still teach Latin in high school, rarer cases in public school, but it is still spoken. It's spoken mainly by people who are really interested in Roman and Greek history, and also by people who are really into science and that sort of thing. Almost all of, actually, speaking of science, almost all of our really fancy scientific words for animals, for plants, for medicine, for many things along these lines are Latin words, almost all of them. So when somebody says, oh, this is the scientific name for blah, 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 usually it actually is just a Latin name or Latin word, I should say, right? And it's literally just a word that's describing exactly what the plant does or what the animal does, right? So it's used a lot of the time still in doctors, sometimes depending on the country they're from, have to actually learn some Latin. They don't necessarily need to know how to speak it, but they need to know how to read it, right? So it is still spoken, but like I say, it's in more of a small community now that's all over the world. All kinds of people from all over the place learn it. It is not spoken natively anymore, meaning that people don't learn it because their mom and dad knew Latin whenever they were little babies and they are passing it down and passing it down. It isn't like this anymore, right? But it doesn't mean that it's a dead language. Some people will tell you that Latin is a dead language. No, it very much is not a dead language. It's a living ancient language, right? So people still speak it today. And if any of you guys don't know who this is a very, very, very famous philosopher. His name is Socrates, right? He's really, really important to Greek and Roman culture. All right, so this is the most important thing for you guys to learn this whole time that you're learning Latin with me, is that Latin is the mother language of many, many, many languages today. Almost every single language that is spoken in Europe or has come from Europe is actually a kind of form of Latin in some ways, right? So why is this? Why is that the case? It's because languages don't stay the same all the time, right? They don't just, everybody speaks the same all the time forever, ever, ever, ever. No, 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 no. This is not how it goes. What happens is languages evolve and change over time. It can take long periods of time. It can take thousands of years, but they do actually change and they kind of transform as people start thinking differently. They use different words, they pronounce things differently. And in some cases, they forget how something is pronounced altogether. They don't even know anymore. So what happens is languages will evolve over time. So as I told you, Latin is the language that was spoken by the Romans. The Romans spread this language all over the place, right? What happens is people were learning Latin, but they didn't always speak it exactly like how the Romans did it. They would kind of have their own way of speaking it to some degree, right? And so what happened is as this was going on, basically, the kind of Latin or the kind of language that was similar to Latin that was, say, in England ended up becoming English. The stuff in France started to become French eventually, and Spanish and Portuguese, etc. Lots of these languages. So that being said, as I've said down here, almost 80%, actually about 80% of English words are taken directly from Latin, right? right out of the language. Oh, I don't know what's going on here. Sorry, 1 second. I don't know what's happening. So anyways, I need to set the screen share back up. I don't know what's going on here. All right, let's bring back the slideshow. Resume share, please. Okay, in any case, let's get this figured out. I don't know why it shut my screen share off completely. I'll just start a new one. Okay, so hopefully you guys can still see this. Is everybody able to still see the slideshow? Yes, good, okay, thank you. I was worried something weird happened. Okay, anyways, so back to this. So that being said, much of the vocabulary, not just in English, but in English, French, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese, these are the 5 big languages that are from Latin. They're all really related to it. They are, as I've said, right, if Latin's their mother, they're like the children of Latin, right? So what this means, well, actually, let's see the similarities to this, right? Just to see an actual visual example of this going on. So we see mater, right? Mater is mother. It looks very similar. Pater is father. And maybe some people might know that in French, the word for father is père, right? Which is the same, right? Pater is where it comes from. Frater is brother. And actually, we take this word frater, we still kind of use it in English to some degree. For instance, a fraternity house, which has that word frater in it, is a kind of club and university for a bunch of boys who kind of live in a house together. And then we have soror, right, which is very, very similar to sister. Still to this day, very, very similar word. It changes, and you can see how that happens, right? Over time, it's sort of twisted into something different. And we also, likewise, we still use that word soror for sorority, right? Which is a club and university for a bunch of girls who live together, right? Video. And you may see that that looks exactly like video. And that's because that's where we get that word from. And it literally just means I see, right? So you see that sometimes things will change meaning a little bit, but they still have that similar origin, right? And then me literally just means me. It's exactly the same. And you'll see a lot of these things, right? A lot of Latin words that end up just changing maybe a little bit here, a little bit there, but for the most part, there's still a little bit left, a little Latinness left in some of these words, right? Now, what this means is, and this is why I say this is so, so, so important, learning that languages evolve and that Latin is a mother language, this is why this is extremely important. That even if you know tiny little bit of Latin, just a little bit, even just a few Latin words, you don't even maybe know how Latin works, but you know a few words of it, it means that you can learn almost any of the languages that come from Latin like 100 times easier. You would be very surprised at how much easier it makes this. And actually, as well, it will make your knowledge of English like way better than it was, because you'll know why some of the weird rules are in English, right? You might have dealt with that. Having, for instance, spelling in English is a little strange, right? You'll spell something like how it sounds, and then your teacher will say, "Oh, no, 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 that word is spelled is spelled differently than that," and you're like, "Well, why?" And they're like, "Well, just because." You're going to see some of that just because, right? And the reason why is because a lot of people nowadays don't know Latin anymore, right? It used to be a very normal thing for people to learn. Now it's not so much, right? But as I say, your knowledge of this will be expanded so much beyond what you knew before. By the end of these lessons, like I say, your ability to learn grammar in any language in general, but especially the ones that come from Latin, will be like, woo, way better than it was before. All right. So Now let's look at actually a piece of a tablet that is actually from the Roman Empire. And as I say, notice something about the letters, right? We have Romanos, Martius, Fluvius, or Eberoium, yeah, right? You see all of these things? You obviously will notice that English uses the exact same alphabet as Latin, except for a few minor differences. And actually, before we continue on, I want to point out something kind of fun, just to show you guys. You'll notice that as we go further down this tablet, the letters start getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and especially right at the end. And it's actually because, and I'm sure a lot of people have had this happen, just like right when we're writing our names in a big letters, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh no, I'm going to run out of room. I don't have enough room. This is exactly what happened to whoever was actually inscribing this on the wall. Okay, so what are the differences, right? You might notice that Latin has a few less letters than English does, right? There's a couple of them that are missing here. And we will see why that is. Latin has fewer letters than English, as I said. The letter J, the letter W, and the letter U were all invented afterwards. They were not initially used by the Romans. Actually, the letter V and the letter U, or sorry, the V and the U were the same letter before, and actually they look similar, right? U is just a curvy V. A V is just a sharp U, right? This was the same letter once upon a time. And the W, you notice how the W just looks like two V's put together? That's because that's exactly what it is, right? And it was just another letter that was added later on in the medieval times, actually, so that people could pronounce things a little bit easier, right? Because you'll see that some of the letters, and actually, before I say that, the J, likewise, it looks like an I, doesn't it? It just looks like an eye with a little tail on the end of it. And it's because it was the eye once upon a time, right? So how is it pronounced, right? How is Latin pronounced? You're going to see that it's not too difficult. It's a little bit different than English. And I'm going to go through nice and slowly and let you hear everything fully from me speaking it, just so you can hear it. I do also have a link to a pronunciation guide if you really want, but it's just there just sort of for fun. Okay, so let's actually, with that being said, there's actually two different ways to pronounce Latin, but don't worry, we're only going to do one. There's the classical way of pronouncing Latin. And you notice that when I say classical, underneath we have this old picture of a Roman temple. And that's because this is the actual way the Romans spoke. This is a little bit more harsher sounding, a little more hard, with a little bit harder edge, right? Whereas in ecclesiastical Latin, which is just a fancy word that means church Latin, is exactly what I say. It is the kind of Latin that's used at church. The Catholic Church, most specifically, uses Latin in a lot of singing and a lot of prayers, right? But they pronounce Latin differently than the ancient Romans would have pronounced it. So as I say, we're only going to be focusing on the classical pronunciation. And almost everybody who you meet who speaks Latin, unless they're Catholic or they are Italian, will almost always be using this pronunciation. It has now become the normal pronunciation for Latin. It once upon a time wasn't, especially in medieval times. People only used church Latin during that time. But now we have done enough research through archaeology and through studying different things that we know how the Romans spoke. So we try to replicate how they spoke rather than doing the church Latin, though it is very pretty in its own way. It's a much softer sounding Latin. Okay, there's there's one big thing that you need to notice, and you'll notice like, hey, there's two A's, there's two E's, there's two I's, there's two O's. Why is this? What is going on, right? The reason is in Latin, we have both long and short vowels. It's not just all the same. So for instance, in English, it doesn't matter. I could say father, or I could say father. Doesn't make any difference at all. It doesn't make a difference. We can do that if we want, and it kind of makes it sound a little different. It makes it more emphasis maybe, but it doesn't change what the word means, right? In Latin, that's not how things are. And if we go back, you'll see these little hats on top of the letters. We go back to the tablet, you'll see that some of them have these little ticks on it. These little ticks or lines are called macrons, and they just show us when the vowel is long or short. And actually for a while, people weren't using these a lot, and they believed it was a later invention until we found Roman tablets that actually had some of these ticks. What ended up happening is people believed that they didn't use them, but it was because these stones are so old that much of these macrons had faded away from the stone, right? Because of all of the wearing down that had happened. Okay, so let's get into the pronunciation, shall we? Okay, so we have the long and shorts. So I'm going to just read from my pronunciation guide here to give you a good thing. If you want, you can look at the guide, but it isn't necessary if you don't want to. Yeah, it's most important just to listen. So let us start with the short A. So it's like like in dinna or dot or casa, right? Pretty similar to English. The long A is pronounced ah, like father, short, long, right? And it is most noticeable that you do a little bit more length. This is actually kind of comparable to tones in Chinese languages, right? Like Cantonese or Mandarin, they have tones, right? They go up and down and stuff. And say, if you got those tones wrong, you would be saying a completely different word, right? This is like that, kind of, right? It's not quite like up and down like tones are, but it works in the same kind of way, right? If we change those, we're saying something different, right? It might help you remember these things, right? Okay, so the short E is like like pet, right? Like et or said, and then the long E is a, right? Like they, a, or me, or sedes, right? A, right? Almost like saying a, right? It's pretty easy. The I, the short I is like hick or pin, sika, right? The long I is e, right? Like machine or heek or sika, right? E. The O, the short O, is O. So like os or mora or off, oh. So then the long O, and this is pretty easy, is O, right? Like clover or os or mores, right? Then the U is also pretty easy. It's pretty similar to English. The short U is like put, put, or tum or sum, right? And then the long U is oo, right? Like rude, oo, to, or sumo, right? Oo is the long U. And we have Y. Y is a strange letter in Latin because this was not a sound that the Romans normally had in their language initially. But as the times went on and Rome and Greece sort of started learning from each other, a lot of words that were in Greek, the Romans didn't have at all. So what they would do is they would basically just take the word from Greek and kind of Latinize it. So you'll see the Y more so in words that are taken from ancient Greek. And it is a little strange sounding, but you're not going to see too many Y's in Latin. And it's only, the only difference isn't necessarily in sound, but how long you do it. So it's more like U, like U, U. If any of you know French, there is this same U sound in French. It's a little strange. You kind of have to curl your lips a little bit to do it. U, right? U. So it's sort of like U, but not quite, right? A little different. And the only difference with the Y is just the length of how long we do it for, right? Diphthongs. This is a weird word. What the heck does that mean? What is that? A diphthong, all that means, and this applies for all the languages that you can learn. It just means when there's two vowels beside each other and they make a new sound. They kind of become a new letter in a way when they're beside each other. And you guys will probably, it's going to be pretty obvious for you guys, right? So I is when A and E are beside each other. Oe is when O and E. A is when E and I are beside each other. Ow is when A and U beside each other. Ew is when E and U. And the only kind of strange one is ui. Ui is whenever there's a U and an I beside each other. The consonants are almost exactly the same as English, but with some differences. And I will actually note to you guys, like, why is there U? You're like, you said there was no U. The reason that the U is used is just so you guys don't get confused. Almost every book that you own or read in Latin, whether it's a little story book or an actual novel, for instance, I have Harry Potter in Latin, you will see U's used. And it's just because you would get really confused if you're always seeing V's, because as you see, the V does make a different sound than just the U, right? Okay, so B is the same as English, B, and now C is K. It is never S. Remember how English sometimes C does all these weird things, right? We have a hard C, we have a soft C, it can go ch, sometimes it does all these weird things. It doesn't do any of these things in Latin. It only goes K. That's all you ever have to know with it. It doesn't do anything fancy beside this. This is actually a Roman letter, right? We'll talk about K afterwards. This CH is not ch. It's more like a little breath after the K sound, like K, right? It's more like K in that way, a bit more like that. It did eventually become something more like Ch, right? So sometimes it was a little bit like Ch, a bit, but an aspiration afterwards is fine for pronunciation. D is the same, D. F is the same, F. G and N make this weird gn sound. It's like hangnail. It's a weird sound. A lot of people have tricky times with it, so don't be too worried about that, right? H does make a sound in Latin. In French, H makes no sound. It's a silent letter, right? And a lot of French people are like, why do we even have H? The reason they have H is because of Latin words, right? So it is the same as English. H, right? Same. J, there is a J here, and it is because in medieval Latin, they did start using the J to differentiate between the I. When you guys see it, it won't be like that, but don't worry, it's not ever really going to be too confusing. But it's pronounced not J, it's pronounced Y, right? Like for instance, the name Julia is a Latin name, but it's pronounced Julia, right? Or Julius, like Julius Caesar, is pronounced Julius, right? And actually, funny thing enough, his name isn't Julius Caesar. If we were to Latin pronounce it, it would be Julius Caesar, right? Is actually how his name would have been said in those times. So yeah, K is also a hard K, but K is only used in Greek loanwords. So you will almost never see a K in Latin. I don't think there's going to be any words that we learn that has K, but it's just to differentiate and say, yes, this is from Greek. L, the same, M, the same, N, the same, right? L, M, N, O, P, right? P is the same. PH is not F, it's P, right? It's more P. Q and U. You might remember that in English, we always have a U after Q. And why is that? Because that's how Q works in Latin. There's always a U after Q, and it's qua, right? The same. R, you roll it a little bit more than English. We don't go right? We go right? A little bit like Arabic, actually. And if you go to Italy today, people still roll their R's in this way. And Greece does this as well, actually. A lot of places around that area will, right, whenever they talk. And Romans actually called this letter the dog letter, because they believed you were making the sound of a dog when you said it. S is the same. It is T is T. TH is not th. It's t, right? There's more of a breath afterwards. T is the same. Don't worry about this stuff. You rarely will see this. V. This is the tricky thing. Never pronounce V like how we pronounce V. In ecclesiastical Latin, it's V. It is not V. It is W. W. It is the W, right? The Romans, like for instance, when they'd say wine, they say ween, right? Ween, right? The same. But they spelt it V-I-N, right? So W. That's a little tricky, but it's pretty easy once you hear it enough. X is the same, X. And Z, they have the diz and the Z. This is once again another Greek loan letter. There usually is going to be no Z that you'll see, right? That's from ancient Greek as well. All right, so now let's look at some very simple Latin phrases. We're going to get to a lot more Latin in the next class, but we'll start with some basic stuff. Salve. Salve is hello. It also doesn't just mean hello. Like for instance, in Mandarin, right? We don't say, when you're saying hello, you're saying ni hao, right? Which is you good. It literally just means you good, but you're not saying you good, right? You're saying hello to somebody, right? So some of the words will have those double meanings, and you'll see that goodbye is like this as well. It meant sort of like be well, right? Are you well? That sort of thing is what they're saying. Like salve, and we actually get an English word from this. It's not used too much anymore, but the word salutations, which is a very fancy way of saying hello, comes from the word salve, right? Salve is hello. Mihi nomen est. So if I was going to say my name, I would say mihi nomen est Luna, right? You notice that it looks pretty similar. Nomen. Nomen is name, right? In French, it is nom, N-O-M is name, right? So very, very, very similar. And actually the word noun in English, right? So a noun is a person, place, or thing, comes from the word nomen, which just means a name, right? So literally, when we're talking about nouns, they're just names for things, right? And est. You see est, right? Est is still used a lot, actually, and it does sound like the English is to some extent. You see is, right? It kind of changed in that sound, but in French, in Spanish and Portuguese, est is still used to say is, right? They say est, right? It's still the same. They don't pronounce the T in French, but it's still spelled exactly the same. You'll see a lot of these kinds of things. Quid est nomen tibi, right? What is your name? Quid est nomen tibi? Quid, right? This is interesting thing to learn. You know what? We have the word question in English, right? So this is where we get that from, right? Qua, that qua for question, is from Latin. Now, it's really interesting is if you pay attention to our question words in English, so they all start with WH for the most part, except for one, right? So who, what, when, where, and why. They all have the same wah sound. In Latin, the same kind of thing happens, but it's with the qua sound, right? They're usually only about 4-letter long words, but if you see a Q, U, like quid or quis or quit, these kinds of things, it's a question word, actually, right? They're really helpful when you know that. Et tu, and you, This is literally the same in modern French today. If you want to say and you in French, we still say tu. And actually the word you, right, for you, right, that comes from tu, right? Originally, that was how it was said. And then we have wale, wale, right? Goodbye is how they said goodbye, but it literally means be strong, right? That was how they would say goodbye to each other. They say, be strong, right? Wale. And actually, we get some English names from Wale, like for instance, the name Valerie, right? Or that actually the word valor, it means that, it means to be strong, right? So the name Valerie, for instance, it just means almost like the strong lady, right? Is what that name would mean. Okay, so far so good. But remember, Latin grammar is going to be very different than English grammar, right? It's like initially people, and I've seen this happen to quite a lot of people where they think, oh, it's going to be easy, it's going to be great. And I don't want to scare you guys away from it, but just keep in mind that things work very different in Latin than they do in English in terms of grammar, right? Grammar is just the fancy word for how language works, right? If any of you are maybe confused by that. Some people are, most people aren't, but it's just the way a language works, the rules, so to say, right? So big thing to take away from tonight is that it's possible to say very complicated things in Latin in a much easier way than English. English has to put all these added words here and there and everywhere, and it's very clumsy, actually. And you'll see why it's very clumsy after you learn a little bit of Latin. You'll be like, oh my goodness, that makes more sense, right? Latin is a bit like math, actually. A lot of stuff in Latin equals itself out, right? And we'll see that. There are some tricks to help, and I really try to get those tricks out to you guys and get them so stuck in your head that you'll never forget them for the rest of your life, right? And as I say, we'll learn slowly, because what happens is a lot of people will rush learning languages. They'll be like, I get it, I get it, I get it. I'm going to go on to the next chapter and the next chapter and the next chapter. And then what ends up happening is they didn't fully memorize the basics. So what happens? They're like, oh no, chapter 15 is so hard in my Latin textbook. I got to go back all the way to chapter 1 and relearn all the other stuff now. I want to make it so you guys don't have that issue if you are to continue learning Latin. And if you don't, then you will know enough that you have definitely learned things with this. Okay, so Latin words hold much more information in just one word than an English word does. A lot of the times Latin words will do the work that it takes 2, 3, sometimes even 4 words in English. We need to put all these words in, and Latin can do it in one word, right? That's pretty interesting. So how does that work? How would that work at all? And it's because Latin has these special endings on all of the words, especially the nouns, but don't worry, we'll learn more about that next class. But for now, learn that the endings on Latin words are extremely important. So important. They are the most important part of Latin, right? We can put a fancy ending on a word in Latin, and it will mean what it would take a whole separate word to say in English, actually. It's quite interesting. I think you guys will really like the concept when you see how it works. Because like I say, it makes way more sense than how English does all this weird stuff, that you start realizing how weird it is whenever you look at how it used to work, right? In English's mother language. So how I'm going to show you guys this for now, for today, is through gender. So we have the goddess Luna, right? It's also my name. And we have Augustus on the other side, the Roman Emperor Augustus, right? So the endings a and the endings us in this situation are actually telling us what gender things are, right? And you'll notice this, that a lot of English girl names, especially, this is kept around with girl names usually, they will have this ending at the end, right? Luna, Anna, Camilla, all kinds of this Rebecca, right? There's a lot of endings to girls' names in English. This is why. It's because that sound in Latin was a feminine sound, right? Maybe you guys know that some languages have what they call grammatical gender, right? So for instance, French is one of these languages where there is masculine and feminine. In Latin, there's three genders: masculine, feminine, and neuter. Neuter just means neither. It literally just means it's not this, it's not feminine, it's not masculine. So it's not too difficult to understand. But for today, we'll just show you these two things, right? We have the goddess Luna, as I say, the sound and the us sound. And actually, you'll notice a lot, I find in a lot of say comic books or manga or anime, all of these kinds of things, they do like to take Latin kind of boy sounding names, right? Like Aurelius or Noctus, right? These kinds of names, because they sound cool, right? I think to a lot of modern people, they're like, oh, that sounds fancy. The reason it sounds fancy to our ears is because it's Latin, actually, right? And then just a little fact, the goddess Luna was the goddess of the moon, right? Luna means moon. And she was also seen as the goddess of childbirth. And then Augustus, as I say, is the first proper Roman emperor, right? He's extremely important historical figure in Rome. And that's why I use his name to show you guys, right? Okay, so we're going to go through what was learned today, and then we'll do a little bit of vocab because and kind of flesh out everything else. So I always do this with you guys, right? After we've gone through learning everything that we have, I always will repeat it for you guys because we need memorization, right? If we don't memorize something, we don't know it. And repetition is a helpful way of doing that, right? I know it seems redundant, but it is important to do this because, like I say, they think so differently that it's sometimes a little strange. So Latin was spoken by the ancient Romans, as I said, but it's still spoken today. It's in a smaller community of people. It's usually people who are really intellectual. I find, at least, they're people who are really into science and this and that, right? They're the really intellectual people that usually learn it, or people who are really into poetry too, I should say. That's how I got into Latin. So it is still spoken today. It is not natively spoken today, right? But it is not a dead language. And I don't want you guys to believe that stuff, right? We're starting to kind of undo that, but for a long time, everybody was like, oh, Latin is pointless. It's a dead language. Latin is not a dead language. Ancient Egyptian language, that's a dead language, right? People aren't speaking that anymore. Or ancient Norse language, that's a dead language. This is not a dead language. Latin is an ancient living language. It's very unique in that way, but it is still alive. Latin is the mother of almost all European languages, right? Almost every single one, except for a few of them. And even still, there's still a little bit of Latin hidden in there with them. They are taken directly from Latin. Why? The Romans took over lots of land, lots of land. And so lots of people had to learn Latin, right? And actually something kind of similar to this is if you go to China, if you go to Japan, both writing systems are similar. And that's because they wanted to have a writing system so people could speak differently, but they could write and be like, this is what it is. And they'd be like, oh, okay, I understand, right? This is kind of like this, right? Latin helps you become better at English, even if you know a little bit. It really does, right? Especially when you learn some of the Latin grammar, because a lot of people, I find a lot of new English teachers will be teaching you English. They'll teach you English grammar and they'll go subject and predicate and they say all these weird, crazy, big linguistic words, and they don't actually know what they mean. The reason is because a lot of those grammar words are Latin words, because we learned how to do grammar like the British people, right? Because they spoke English first. They learned how to do grammar from Latin grammar. So they used the same words. And so a lot of the times it's very common for people, even all the way up into university, to be confused by some of those words. And you'll see that a lot of those words won't scare you anymore because you know exactly what they mean, right? Even if you can't speak a whole Latin sentence, you'll be like, oh yeah, I kind of get what that means. It has the word this inside of it. It must be this, right? And you'll see it's very, very, very helpful for English. Latin makes learning all of the European languages so much easier. And I really mean this, right? You'll be able to pick up, for instance, Spanish and Portuguese tend to be the most similar to Latin today. So if you knew Latin or some of it, you'd be able to learn those two languages very quickly, and Italian as well, right? As I say, English, French, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese are the big languages that come from Latin. There's a lot of other small ones, but that's they're not as big as those ones, right? So knowing some Latin makes that stuff way easier. So we learned the Latin pronunciation in the alphabet. We learned that there were fewer letters in Latin alphabet because they weren't invented yet, right? Some of the letters sort of shared sounds together, right? They're, like I said, the I and the J were just one letter before the V and the W. Well, W was only invented so we could differentiate between the W sound and the V sound, right? So then you got another letter to explain that, to make it easier for people. Another thing too, actually, that I just remembered is Latin originally did not have any spaces in the words. So, you know, we have spaces between all the words, right? Now, that was not the way Latin in the ancient times was written down. It all was close, close, close together. And there was no periods, and there was no punctuation, no question marks, no exclamation marks, nothing like that. Nothing like that had been invented yet, right? All of that stuff came later on whenever people wanted to have a little bit more explanation. They're like, well, wait, I'm getting confused reading this text. And actually, if you see it, it's very confusing. And it kind of is like, wow, right? Really wild because it's all close together like that. So yeah, we learned that Latin's grammar is different than English grammar. And this is really key, because what happens is we don't want this to happen. And that's why I say this. It seems obvious. They're like, well, yeah, it's a different language. Of course, the grammar is going to be different. The reason I say that and enforce that is because what happens is this, is if you don't remind yourself that, you start learning Latin, okay? And you're learning Latin, learning it, and you start putting English grammar into how you're doing Latin. And you don't want to do that. You want to almost like tell your brain, like train your brain to say, no, these are different. I am not going to use English to make Latin. I am going to think Latin, right? That's why I say these things, because if you start doing that, you will make a lot of weird mistakes, right? That won't necessarily be wrong sometimes, but they'll be not quite right. And we'll get into why that is a bit more next time. And key thing, the only piece of grammar that's really going to be taught today is Latin endings to the words are super important, especially nouns. Especially nouns. There's endings on nouns that we don't have in English, and we'll talk about that stuff next time. But those endings, I'll let you guys know this, are going to tell us exactly what the word is doing in the sentence. Is the word the subject of the sentence? Is the word the object of the sentence? Is the word possessive, etc., all kinds of different things like this. And then as well, how I taught you guys today to really get that in your mind, is the word feminine? Is the word masculine? Or is the word neuter, right? That's another thing that they can do too, right? So they can do so many things. They do almost everything in the sentence. Just those last 2 or 3, sometimes 4, not usually 4, but right? These endings are telling us exactly what is going on in the sentence. Okay, So I'm going to stop this and I'm going to go through the vocabulary sheet that I have for you guys next. And then we will sign off for the evening. Oh, 1 second, it's not opened up. Okay, let's get to the, just give me 1 more second. Okay, and some of them you've already seen today, like I said, so it's not going to be too crazy. We'll just go through them 1 more time, right? So as I said, salve, hello, right? It's like saying salutations. It's saying be well, right? Wale, wale is goodbye, but it means be strong, right? And as I say, we get words like valor, right? If you have a lot of valor, right? And we use that in like a lot of like, say, RPG kind of talk today in video games and that. We say, oh, this person has so much valor, right? That's what that means. It means power, right? That's how they said that. Mater. And actually, you'll notice that the word mater is still used a little bit today in English. We use it for words like maternity, right? So like say if somebody is going on maternity leave, that means they've had a baby, right? A woman has had a baby, so she's going to go off to be a mother. That's what maternity means, right? Anything that's related to your mother. Just like pater, right? Father. Pater means father. So anything that is a paternal thing is related to your dad, right? That's what pater means. And now we have some other words that we didn't see today, right? Added a few for you guys. Porta. Porta means door. It literally just means door. You might see the word portal in it. That's where we get that word from. A portal is just a door to another world, right? So that's what that word means. It just means door or gate, right? But it's the same, right? Porta, right? And actually in French today, the word porte, like a door, it's the same, right? Porta, or a porthole, right? It's a hole that's a door, right? Puer. Puer, here's one word that's a little different and isn't the same as the ones that we're using in English. And this is going to be the case sometimes, right? Puer means boy, right? Puella. Puella means girl, right? And you can see I actually think that these words might still be used a little bit in Italian, puer and puella. Gladius. Gladius. So when we talk about gladiators, right, Roman warriors that fought in the Colosseum and fought against either other warriors or animals in some cases, like elephants. Actually, the Romans would, their Colosseum actually had like elevators and different secret doors underneath the floor to bring up things like elephants and tigers and lions and stuff for people to fight in the gladiatorial games. So gladius, right? A gladiator is just somebody who uses a sword, right? You see? Acus. Acus. And then I've chosen gladius and acus because acus is a needle, like for sewing, right? This was a very important trade that women did in ancient Rome, right? Because we are always talking about Roman men, right? Roman men were the soldiers, they were the government officials, they were all of these things, but women did play a very important role in Rome as well. And usually it was related to making clothing during this time, right? And then raising children and all of that good stuff. But the symbol of a needle was very, very related to women. We get a word from acus in modern English, like acupuncture, right? Which is that medicine, right, that people do, or that kind of medicine that people do where you get punctured with needles, right? They put needles in your skin, right? Acupuncture. So acus, right? That's where that comes from. And then finally est, right? You've seen that. And yeah, like I say, this is a very old word. Est or is, right? Very old. A form of this word, like est, has been used to say I am or it is or whatever, right? To say that verb longer than Latin and even longer than ancient Greek before that, right? So this word is as old as almost the Stone Age. We've been saying a word like this in this language group. Okay, so we're going to wrap up now. Their only assignment today is very, very easy. We're not going to do any of the translation of the comics. I did put the first comic up there for anybody who doesn't have the book. If you want to look into it and do it, it's okay. That's usually what the homework is going to be, just to write a translation of the comic, because I really want you guys to just listen and absorb everything. I don't want to put a lot of pressure on doing crazy amounts of homework, right? Really want you to just absorb this, and for this to be an enjoyable and fun experience, so that you'll take away the knowledge forever after this, right? So anytime you learn any language, you can use the stuff you've learned in this. So the assignment today is just going to be to write a little something that you found interesting in the class. The assignment's already put up onto the Google Classroom, and then to review the vocabulary, try to speak it aloud. And this is the last thing I'll say before I stop, is that when you study a language, then this is not just Latin, but we're going to talk about it with Latin this time. You need to write it when you're practicing your words, right? You got your vocabulary sheet, you're practicing for the week, okay? You need to write the word down, but not just that. You need to speak the word while you're writing it down, and you need to look at the word. And you're probably going to be looking at the word because you have to write it, right? So that's an easy thing. It's all together in that way. And then you have to hear it. And unless you're deaf, if you're speaking, you can hear yourself, right? Because what happens is, if we do all of those things together, rather than say you write out the word 100 times but you don't say anything, you actually aren't fully studying, and you're going to end up taking 3 times as long to do all the studying. Whereas if you do all of that at once, I know it's a little weird. You're like, oh, I'm like, sounds strange trying to talk this aloud. You learn 3 times as fast. Your brain will absorb everything way more effectively this way, right? So anytime, any language, doesn't matter what language, this doesn't have to be Latin, anything that you ever learn in the future, always do that. It's a little awkward, I know. I was that way too, to be honest. When I was in university, I learned Japanese, and I was really, really shy, right? Didn't want to say it aloud and stuff, but believe me, when you do this, you're going to thank yourself so much. You learn way faster, like I say, about 3 times faster, right? And then you don't have to do as long of studying, right? Because then what ends up happening, you come back and you're like, oh, I don't know that word, right? This way, you really know the words. Okay, so